Is Godzilla Minus One a masterpiece? Drive-by movies, you're watching
Fresh Releases.
My name is Blaze.
And my name is James.
And this week we're talking Godzilla's brand new movie, Godzilla Minus One.
Godzilla Minus One.
Fans are raving about this new horrific Godzilla movie, which is about post-war Japan, which is at its lowest point when a new crisis emerges in the form of a giant monster, baptized in the horrific power of the atomic bomb. So Godzilla has meant a lot to me growing up. I've seen every single one, every single Japanese one, every single American one. I even watched a couple of the spin-off TV shows, the Hanna-Barbera one, as well as the Fox early 2000s one that was a sequel to the Roland Emmerich movie. I didn't care, just anything Godzilla I was a fan of, and I loved it all. Godzilla's meant a big part of me, and I'm glad that we're living in a time where I got these American ones, also a TV show on Apple TV. Japan just busted the Shin Godzilla, which I absolutely loved, still relatively recently. And now Godzilla Minus One is here. What are your thoughts on it, Blaze?
So yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm as big of a Godzilla fan as you, but I will say that I was, probably watching Godzilla at the same time that you were. It's not something that's totally new to me. It was just hard as a kid to get the films. I feel like maybe you could rent them, but sometimes when I'm suckered into the VHS rental store, it was hard for me to pick a Godzilla movie with such a big option. It was easier for me to just go straight over the Jackie Chan section and know that I was going to be impressed. But yeah, Godzilla, absolutely loved it. Once I got to watch more and more of the movies as a kid, I think my first one was Destroy All Monsters, and probably the first one. So yeah, it was cool to see a new kind of modern take on it, while also being what felt like almost a prequel or origin story, essentially, even though the first film is obviously the first origin story. It felt like I don't know where this film lined up in that timeline, but it didn't really matter. It was cool to see just a new take almost on it that felt really classic, unlike something recently like Shin Godzilla. We both love that film, but this felt more along the lines of an OG classic Godzilla movie and had a great story in it.
Yeah, I think one thing that this movie gets right that a lot of the other Japanese films, as well as the American ones, especially the American ones actually, that they get wrong is just the human element, because the human element's usually the dullest part of any Godzilla movie. I've always said, though, people are a little hard on the 2014 one. There's hardly Godzilla in it. I was like, well, that's every single Godzilla movie ever. It's just harder because that movie's 2 hours total. Here we have another 2-hour movie, but I actually had characters that I actually enjoyed watching. The acting is great. The performances are there. However, the storyline did remind me of a TV show comedic episode, or a comedy TV show with a very specific episode that kind of ruined this movie for me. But overall, though, I was very invested in the human aspect and just the great performances from these leads, because it kept me going through the movie, wanting them to come out with this, pretty badass, scary Godzilla. Yeah.
So what I think is kind of interesting there is I feel like most of the Godzilla films, whether it's, the older Japanese films, depending on which era you're watching, or even just, every iteration in the States here, the most recent, Legendary Pictures, or also that Roland Emmerich one, it always feels like the characters only exist to propel Godzilla's plot further until he's eventually destroying a major city in a metropolis. But it felt like this one, you could almost lift Godzilla out of Minus One and there still be an interesting story without a Godzilla, and it maybe changed Godzilla to being another state power attacking Tokyo, that you could kind of translate this movie well enough. Felt like the core human story is still there and still very interesting, whether Godzilla exists in this film or not. Godzilla is just an added bonus that this is a Godzilla film.
Absolutely, yeah. That's definitely one way to take away from it. And that was one of the benefits of Shin Godzilla too. I felt that that was one of the first movies where I actually cared about the story, but not so much the characters, because there's so many characters in that movie. And while I think I overall liked every character in that movie, it was just a fun take on Godzilla, with it kind of feeling like an episode of what is that anime you introduced me with, all the kaiju and robot
Evangelion?
monsters? Yeah, there we go. And I think also that came from the makers of that show too. So, you know, it just was very reminiscent of like an anime, I thought, versus this one, you know, goes back to like the old rootful story, but instead of like going kind of in a sci-fi element, it's more of like a post-war human drama about family. It's a movie about family, as they say. But with, you know, just Godzilla kind of thrown in the madness of it. And, you know, I'm all for it. Like a great way to work with its budget, because this movie's unreal for it being made for 15 million, I'd say. Apparently it might have even been a little less than that, according to what some people are saying about the director's statements and like some interviews. But just the idea, though, that this is not a high budget movie and it looks as well as it looks as good as it does, just an awesome fact. And just kind of like a take notes, like Hollywood, like as long as you have a good movie, we said it just a couple weeks ago, as long as you have a good movie just to start with, like any movie should translate well in any audience, and I'm glad that it's doing so.
Definitely. I think that's really important. The fact that this is, you know, one of 2 Japanese films out right now that are, you know, doing really well at the box office and kind of surprising others, especially a box office right now that feels kind of crowded, I feel like, especially with the addition of those 2 Japanese films. You know, you have Wonka as well, and Iron Claw, and a lot of stuff just trying to grab onto any sort of audience that they can in the busy kind of holiday season. But getting into something that I feel like I've seen a lot before. It took me a little bit to get to see this film, because I think originally it was only supposed to open for like a week or 2, and it just kept building upon. So eventually it kind of added more showings. There was one week where there was only like 1 showing and I couldn't really get to see it, but then like eventually it came back and almost had like a full, you know, day's worth of screenings each day for a week. So I was able to finally get to check it out. But I had heard a lot of how this is like a horrific movie. This is Godzilla as if it's done as a horror film. And I think, as you guys know, here at Drive By Movies, James and I are both big horror fans. We're also Godzilla fans, but I didn't feel like this, you know, married those 2 concepts. I didn't feel at any way that this was like a horrific movie by any means. It's definitely not a horror movie. There are elements, obviously, that are horrific. It's about war, clearly, which is very horrific. But there was no moments where it felt like Godzilla was indiscriminately chasing people down, discriminately chasing people down. He is indiscriminately attacking people, of course, and he is retaliating to any attacks that he's being put upon, but it never felt like he was like purposefully chasing certain people or the characters in this film. It almost just feels like collateral damage in a way.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, that was definitely one thing I wanted to bring up, just because, you know, you and I have seen lots of Godzilla movies. I've seen them all, and it wasn't anything more horrific, and it wasn't anything different. Like, I think a lot of people are using clickbait terms with this movie on YouTube as well as TikTok by saying it's unlike any Godzilla movie ever, because one of my favorite ones, Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters, All Out Attack, kind of explores similar issues with, you know, the horrors of war. And then also even Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, the 1989 version, also that one kind of focuses on time travel, but also has a big World War II sequence within that movie, and someone who was a veteran of, like, you know, kind of approaching Godzilla as like a friend almost. But you know, if you've seen that movie, you know what happens. But, you know, like, I'm just here to say that, like, you know, these ideas have been explored before. I'm not like here being like, oh, like, you know, I've seen more Godzilla, I know more than you. I'm just like surprised though that people are telling you, saying that like this is unlike anything you've ever seen for Godzilla fans and audiences alike. I'm like, not really, honestly, but like I liked it. It's just like a lot of people are making it seem like it's the craziest movie ever made, I feel like.
So the elephant in the room, is Godzilla Minus One a masterpiece?
I'd say it's one of the best of the franchise. I did enjoy it. It's a great movie. Like, I gave it a great review on Letterboxd. I reviewed it a couple weeks ago on there, and, you know, we're finally bringing it out on YouTube right now. But I preferred Shin Godzilla over the 2, honestly. I thought that Godzilla was way more scarier than this one. The whole time of that movie, I was like, how are they going to take this monster down? I still think the 1954 one is the best one. But even in the franchise standards, I still prefer the 1984 Return of Godzilla more than this one, and even Godzilla versus Destroyer or Giant Monsters All Out Attack. I think I'd still prefer those ones over Minus One, but Minus One is still very good. Highly enjoyed it, but like I said earlier, an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm about a kamikaze pilot kind of made this movie not funny to watch in any way. It's just like, oh, this reminds me of the episode of Curb.
And I guess that's funny in itself, not the subject matter, but just the fact that like, yo, Curb did this. Did they do it better? I don't know, but
I really not. But yeah, but I love Curb.
But they mentioned that whole subplot, and it is funny in its own right. But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I don't know if I really enjoyed it. I was sucked in. I absolutely loved it. I thought one of the things like, that I couldn't get out of when watching this movie is just the fact that like, dude, this is only like, everyone's been saying this is only $15 million. I'm like, dude, this film looks so good. I'm not a fan of visual effects, but even though there's a ton of visual effects in this movie, I thought they did a really great job of like shooting around it while at the same time like doing all those cliches, like showing the monster within the first 5 minutes to just get you suckered in, instead of like some other movies, like some other Godzilla movies, especially the legendary ones, will kind of take so long to get you to that, where I'm like, dude, I already mentally checked out. I'm thinking about you, Legacy of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. Like, oh my god, yeah, they show you a monster in the first 5 minutes of that, but there's some episodes later on where they don't show you anything for like a whole episode, and you're just like, dude, I'm already checked out, man. Come on, bring me back to life.
Yeah, I noticed that they always throw in a monster at the cliffhanger, and like, oh well, now I gotta watch next week's episode, and that monster sequence is settled within 2 to 3 minutes. Like, damn, all the budget just goes to the intro and the finale of each episode. It's got me hooked because when you start and end that way, but yeah, it's more of just a human case file family drama, I guess. But got to do what you can do with the budget, I guess. And this movie works very well to its advantages with just some amazing CGI, I'd say. I guess like just when you have the dedication of people who really believe in the film you're making, it works out well. Definitely did, because I really did enjoy this movie. It is still one of my favorite Godzilla movies, I'd say. It's just not one of the best ones in my personal opinion, but I see why so many people are enjoying this movie. It's just not the most horrific and like masterpiece I feel like that everyone's making it out to be, but I'm glad that people are so into Godzilla right now, because I'm hyped and ready to talk more Godzilla for the rest of my life, honestly. But yeah, those are our thoughts on Godzilla Minus One. Are we right? Are we wrong? I mean, honestly, we like the movie, so don't get mad if we don't hail it as the masterpiece that you might think it is. But, leave a comment letting us know what you thought about the movie, because like I said, we can talk Godzilla all day, any day. Yeah, that's a great way to help support the show, so please do that.
And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and click that notification bell to get all of our latest updates.
And speaking of updates, be sure to catch all our social media links down below. We got Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, as well as our own Letterboxd accounts. That'll conclude this week's episode. Tune in next week for a brand new video.